Hey there, welcome to the podcast. Lynette White from Lynette White Social is on the podcast. And I'm telling you, she is a down to earth storyteller that's helping schools elevate their storytelling. She's going to break down her kind of career and pathway into the work that she's doing now. She's been working in schools for the last 15 years, really got her start in social media with Santa Ana and then went on to get a bachelor's of communication and a master's degree. So learn more, a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about her book, the Ed Branding book, How to Build Educational Leadership with Social Influence. So that'll be exciting. And then she works with a lot of schools and she's gonna really break down the three biggest struggles that educators have when it comes to using social media to share what's happening at their school. She's also going to share an amazing tool. And then we're going to talk about some of the great stories that they've been able to share, which includes a podcast. And so I'm going to ask her for some details there. You are definitely going to want to lean in, take some notes, and follow up after this. Also, just a mention, hey, it's December 2nd. It's getting close to the holidays. Buy yourself a book, right? The Ed Branding book. And while you're at it, if you have not yet purchased Social Media for Schools, the book that I released in 2023, buy that as well. But make it a twofer, right? We'll make it a package deal. Great resources that are there to help you, not just a one-time read, but really some ongoing help to support your storytelling. So before we get started with Lynette, I'm first going to share a K-12 PR tip. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is a tip that you're going to hear from Lynette White on video creation. I just recently started exploring CapCut as a unique tool to be able to create some short reels that are a little more pizzazzy. She gave me, pizzazzy is a word, okay? She gave me a new app called Mojo. Mojo videos. You can do a free version, so it's going to ask you to pay. You just X out of that. You can use it for free. Very similar to CapCut, but maybe give you some different versions, different options, maybe a little flashier, Lynette thought. I just tried to create one with a series of about eight photos. It was very easy. I was able to save it to my camera roll. Unique thing with Mojo is it's saving it without the audio, but it tells you in Instagram what audio you need to use. And once you click on it, you can save that audio, okay, to your saved. And that way, when you upload the video, all you do is go to saved audio and you're going to be able to easily match up the music with the video you just created. So maybe you want to check it out. If you are happy with just creating your reels in Instagram or in Canva or in CapCut, you never have to find out and use these new tools. But when we find out about them, we like to share them with you. So that is this week's K-12 PR tip, Mojo video. All right, now let's get to today's interview with Lynette White. Oh my goodness, Lynette White is on the podcast. Hello, Lynette.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm feeling like I should have a timer for us because we may want to talk all day.
Right?
But very blessed to be able to have you on the Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast. Why don't you share your background and then the work you do with Lynette White Social?
Yeah, so my background is super interesting. I mean, I met you years ago when I was Jerry Almendarez's executive assistant, Santa Ana Unified. In total, I have about 15 years in education. I've had all the different classified roles there could be at a school site, from the registrar to the site clerk, attendance tech, office manager. And then eventually I got promoted to the superintendent's office, which was, just a great pathway to then meeting Jerry Almendarez, who completely changed the trajectory of my career and just exposed me to communications in a way that I never thought I could do it, I guess. I never saw those things in myself. And he just really encouraged me. And so I went back to school, got my bachelor's, and then went on to earn my master's. And have just been in communications ever since, just loving it from different districts. And then now I'm with Lynette White Social, which is my own LLC. I'm following in your footsteps of, being a woman leader on her own, which is so scary.
Yes. scary and exciting and everything all at the same time, right?
Right. And so now I get to work with different organizations and school districts throughout the state, really, because I'm really just in California at this time. But I get to help them amplify their stories, crisis communications, like whatever they need communications wise. I'm the girl that can help them out. So
Okay.
yeah, that's where I'm at now.
So, you mentioned a bachelor's and a master's. So, can you share what that's in just for our listeners?
Yeah, so my bachelor's is in communications with an
Okay.
emphasis on new media, which was, I guess, kind of a new offering at that time.
Okay.
And so it was really interesting to kind of get that within the first few years of it being offered. And then my master's is also in communications, but with an emphasis on education.
Okay.
And so that program was through Grand Canyon University online. It's in Arizona. But the cool part about that one was my cohort that I had, basically, because we all stayed together throughout the 2 years of the program. They were mainly educators because that pathway was kind of to lead you to be a college professor. So a lot of our things that we learned were about not only K-12 but higher ed and with communications, PR, marketing all thrown in there. So it was just like a really perfect program, I think, for someone in school PR. And I just stumbled upon it and loved it. I can't say enough good things about that program.
That's incredible. Well, I'm sure people will be checking that out. Tell me, now we're going to talk a little bit about your book, but tell me a little bit first about how you got started when you were the assistant to the superintendent at Santa Ana with Jerry. What was your toe dipping into the water with social media? And then you helped kind of develop a social media or brand ambassador group there. So can you just kind of walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, when Jerry Almendarez started, he was, big social media guy in his prior district, Colton Joint Unified. That's an amazing district as well. And in Santa Ana Unified at the time, we didn't have a public information officer. That position was open. We did have other people in the communications office, but he didn't have that role that was like going to be his right hand, basically. So he had three executive assistants at the time because it's a huge district. And he basically said, okay, who wants to help me? And he still tells a story. He told it the other day at a Cowspray event where I was like, okay, I guess it's me. Because I was like the newest person in the office. So, of course, newest person in the office. I'm like, I better say yes to everything and like volunteer for everything, right? So I was like, I don't know what he wants me to do, but I'll try. And so it started as just managing his social media. So for the longest time, I was actually Jerry Almendarez, and he now has let that out the bag, right? I was him on social media, which was like learning his voice, learning the things that a superintendent would talk about, learning the initiatives of the district, like in depth, so that I can talk about it genuinely. And initially, he was approving all that. And then eventually the trust grew, and he was just like, just post on my behalf. And then, we were also trying to really elevate the district social media presence as well. So throughout the district. And I thought, well, geez, with 50 plus school sites, there's no way I can do that, my actual job, and be Jerry Almendarez on social media, right? So I started just looking around, and I think I attended NSPRA virtually that year, and I heard somebody doing something similar, some brand ambassador type program, where they had somebody come in and do a couple trainings a year. And I thought, well, why can't we do it more often than a couple trainings a year? Why don't we do like a monthly something? And so it started very basic, like Facebook essentials, Instagram basics, like just really to teach people the things that I was also learning in my new media program at the same time. As I was learning it, I was getting to teach it. So we put it out to the staff. Well, I presented it to Jerry, and he was like, go with it. Like, let's try, let's see what happens. I put it out to the staff, and as you know, that staff is great. So the second I put out to the staff, okay, we're going to do this social media thing. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but do you want to help us tell the story of Santa Ana Unified? And very quickly, we got several brand ambassadors for each school site. And then it was like departments wanted to jump on too. So then I was kind of building the plane as I was flying it. So I'm like developing the courses for next month, this month.
Right.
And then eventually we developed, a year's worth of something. And And now you're continuing it there, which is awesome because now it's just growing and flourishing. And the story of Santa Ana is so robust. And I love watching their social media feeds. I still follow them. I'm still friends with so many people in the district. And to see where it's grown from this little idea that I had of really a means of like, I can't do it all myself. And if I'm the only one telling the story, that's just my point of view. But let's get everybody on board. And, with the blessing of Jerry, thankfully to have an innovative leader who was just like, fly, letting me fly. Now it's grown to this beautiful thing that now you help them with. And I'm so grateful to have played that small part in the beginning of just, building the plane as it was flying.
Yeah, which has suited you up well for running your own business now, because that's what you have to kind of do
Right?
every day. So let's transition to your book. We've got the Ed branding book that you wrote with Dr. Renee Bryant. So and it's called How to Build Educational Leadership with Social Influence. So what prompted you to write this book, and really who is it for?
Yeah, so the funny part is, Renee is incredible. She's an incredible storyteller. She is a great advocate for public education. And we would see each other at these conferences and we were presenting about somewhat similar topics. And, she's always got amazing ideas. And so she just said, we need to write a book. Like people in our sessions have asked us those questions. Like, when are you going to write a book about this? And I was always like, yeah, right. That's totally not in my future. That seems like a very daunting, like scary task. And she was just like, let's just try. Let's see what happens. So we would meet at Starbucks every Sunday for several hours. So God bless both of our families that let us just ideate together and just really put everything on paper and see if it was interesting. And so with that in mind was all these educators that would attend our sessions and have all these questions about just, well, how do I tell a story authentically? Well, should I have a professional social media? How do I brand my school if my school brand is not strong? How do I really solidify that? All these questions that we were getting, we were just like, gosh, there is an audience for this. We just need to put this out into the atmosphere and people will love it. And so, we started writing and then probably wrote about 3 or 4 chapters before we were like, okay, well, let's see if someone wants to publish it. And if they don't, we'll self-publish. Like we don't, it needs to go out, right?
Yep.
And I had worked with Wendy at Dave Burgess Inc. On purchasing some books for Jerry, like 2, 3 years before. And I was like, oh, she was always really nice. And it seems like they always help educators. So maybe they'll want to help us. And so literally that was the only place that we submitted our book to because it was like Dave Burgess or no one else.
Yep.
And and then they said yes. They told us they would say yes in like 7 days. They told us yes in like three. So it was just incredible. And then the real writing began, right? Because now we have to write the rest of this book. But we always tried to keep our audience in mind, like from the classified staff member in the office who helps do social media like I used to do, to the teacher who just wants to, talk about like their drama program, their Avid program, their classroom, things that they do in their classroom. The new principal who principals commonly tell us, we went to school to become leaders. We had no idea that we were going to become the chief storytellers and chief marketers of our school site as well. And so just keeping in mind all these different audience members, we really tried to write a book that could appeal to everyone and that everyone could find something in the book that would hopefully help them. And so
Yeah.
I'm really, really proud of that project and that we, brought it to fruition. And every time I see someone post with the book, it's like I get chills. I know you probably feel the same with your book. It's
Yeah.
just like I never thought it would happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe it either sometimes, and it's so helpful when you talk to somebody and they're like, "Oh, I have your book and it's been helpful." But I think, you come at it from the right angle, and that, you can do these little sessions, 1 hour sessions, or have these conversations, but it's like you can't possibly teach everything in an hour session, or even I mean, I do 5 hour workshops and I'm sure you do too. You still can't teach everything. And so, when you sit down and write a book, put chapter after chapter, It forces you to, kind of get those things out there. And you guys wrote this in a very engaging way with being able to take action. You incorporated a lot of different voices of how they're using social media. And so that's been really helpful. So, what's been some of the feedback that you've gotten from the book, and how are you using it with the folks that you work with on a regular basis, either the school districts, or I think you go in and do some trainings for schools now?
Yeah, so the feedback that we've gotten has been really awesome. It's been great to hear, just like you said, people are like, oh my God, I love this chapter. I love what you said here when they quote things from the book. I think what a lot of the feedback that we've gotten that Renee and I both are really proud of is that how conversational it is. I think people thought it was going to be like this dissertation of like, this is how you have to do everything. And really, Renee and I have both always said, we are not saying we're the experts in this. We're saying this is what worked for us. And so, with using this is what worked for us, I think that it is less pressure and maybe makes us a little bit more, it makes it a little bit more attainable. Like, okay, if a busy director and a busy communications person can do this, like I can do this too. Um, and so using it with the districts that I serve, like it's just the book studies have been amazing because people pull stuff out of that book that I'm like, oh my gosh, like they did read it because because that's not just something that's on the front page. But it has also, like you said, where you have the 5 hour trainings and you can't teach everything, it allows me to now teach chapter by chapter. So it, I think, kind of made my training sessions even better because now they're a little bit more dialed in. I think the writing process made my trainings better because that's a little bit more dialed in. I was able to really dive deep into subjects that I think I was glossing over before. And so I think, just people using it as a reference and hopefully a little bit of a inspiration of like, this can be done. And it's not always done perfectly. So I like that we have some stories in there of things that were not done perfectly. Um, so I think it's just a really realistic touchstone, which I think is for your book as well, because I refer to your book a lot too. I think when you pick up a book and you can immediately put some of that stuff into use, that's the type of book that I want. That's the
Right.
type of book that a busy educator needs.
Yeah.
And so that's the best feedback that I get is when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I learned, this strategy in your book and I immediately started using it on social media." And then they'll tag me in it. It's
Yeah.
like that's just the best thank you ever.
Yeah. What do you think that educators struggle with the most? Because you work with a lot of educators across the state of California, and I think the education educators in California are similar to the rest of the US and maybe beyond. But are there two or three, and I don't even know if I have this in my prompt thing, so maybe I'm putting you on the
No, it's all
spot.
good.
But two or three things that they really struggle with that you kind of help people through.
Well, okay, so the biggest thing is time.
Yeah.
And my biggest tip for that is calendar it. I worked with a superintendent who's very busy and, not the most confident on social media, and not because he didn't have good things to say. He never felt he was doing it right. But by calendaring it and making it something that was just part of his day, 15 minutes to scroll through the social media feed. Okay, let's do 15 minutes where you're just going to create something. You're going to, create content. I think breaking it down to that, where it's like, if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. So make it as important as those other meetings because, social media, you need to be consistent to be relevant. So let's keep that consistency. And then another thing I ask them to do is learn how to schedule your posts, whether you're using a third party or you're doing it natively in each of the platforms, however it is that makes it easier for you. I think those two issues are huge with that time efficiency. And then the other part is educators are so darn humble. So a lot of times to get them to feel like they're not bragging, that they're celebrating, I think that is probably more than the time actually is that humility that they have as educators because they didn't get into this profession for attention or praise. They got into this profession because they love to help students. They love to make a difference. Um, but it's opening their eyes, and I'm sure you encounter this as well. It's opening their eyes to, by telling that story, you are helping that community. By sharing the great things that are going on, you are helping that community. You're helping them see everything that's going on in the educational system. You're peeling back some of those layers of things that people don't think exist sometimes. So I think those two would probably be my biggest challenges that I hear from superintendents that I work with or cabinet members that I work with. It's the time and the learning the art of the humble brag, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I think the next one I would just add is that just a little bit of fear, right? Of and that something's new and I'm like you've said before, I'm not sure if I'm gonna get it right when they're calendaring it and just worried about, dude, the only way you're gonna get better is by trying it.
Yeah.
We ask our kids and our students to do new things and our staff to do new things
Yeah.
every day, right? And so we really have to help encourage this. Hey, we're going to try it, and we might really suck at it at first.
Right?
This little video that you do, it might not be the best, but the only way to get better is to try it. And so I think when you can give them those little tools to just be like, this is how you would do it. And here's an example. And then it's like, oh, I can do that, and then slowly but surely. And I don't know about you, Lynette, but I tell people, like, I still get freaked out of
Oh,
trying
yeah.
things. And like I'm pretty new to CapCut and I'm just like kind
Okay.
of, learning a few things and I'm not an expert, but I have been. I'm like, hey, here's how you can use a template and you can just, have 5 pictures and or videos and put them together. And I've just shared that with people and then to see what they then create just by me not even teaching them the advanced stuff, but just teaching them enough to tinker around. I think that's really powerful, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's good for us to talk about that stuff. Like I am always telling people, I am not the youngest person in the room anymore. So those 20-year-old communicators, those are the people I want to talk to ask about the trends, the latest apps that they're using, like CapCut. I just learned about Mojo. I've started using Mojo. It's kind of similar to a CapCut, but I almost think the videos look even better.
Okay.
And that was like a 20 something comms person that taught me that. I
Okay.
think being okay with having reverse mentors and like I always say, I'm not the expert in the room always. I
Yeah.
think the room is the expert. Like we all bring something new that each other didn't know. And I'm still nervous. Like I'm trying to learn this TikTok algorithm and it is killing me. I have never felt so old in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it keeps us on our toes, definitely.
Right?
So Lynette, can you share a little bit about how you work with schools now? There could be schools in California that are like listening and be like, "Hey, so what does that look like?"
Yeah, so it really depends from like county office of eds who have had me come and do PDs for them
Okay.
to like your executive retreats, I've done that, and then to full management. So it's I have a team. So it's myself and then Brianna Benavides. She's an amazing communicator who works with me. And then my oldest daughter is a comms student right now. It's in college, and she's a great graphic designer. So we're a fierce team of 3 women, and and so we help districts, from social media management to crisis communications to just marketing strategies, personal branding. We really have done a little bit of everything. And it's not just district. We've worked with educational companies and other companies as well. So if you need someone to help you level up your story and you're interested in working with us, like feel free to reach out to us. It can look any sort of way. Like one of the districts that I serve, I'm there a couple days a month. Another couple, I'm there just one day a month. And so I am really grateful to be able to offer those services where I can actually be boots on the ground and get to know the community, get to know the staff. I really feel like it helps me storytell a little bit better, but also helps me to build those relationships so I can get that great content out into the atmosphere. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so Lynette White Social is in your name, but you are beyond social. You help with other types of
We
storytelling as well.
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So, what are some of the best stories that you've been able to share from the schools you've worked with for social media? And this could go back to Santa Ana or up until today, but maybe there's two or three stories that really stick out that have done well on social media that may trigger some ideas for our listeners.
Well, kind of social media because I would promote it on social media, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Banning Real Talk podcast.
Okay.
The superintendent there, Superintendent Terrence Davis, saw the podcast that I did in Colton Joint Unified and was just like, we need a podcast in Banning. And I was a little hesitant, and only because it's a small community. They had never had a communications department. And now here we're also including a whole podcast, right? Um, and it honestly couldn't have gone any better if I had written it myself for it to go the way that it did. From the students feeling valued to we had parents on who felt super valued, their voice was heard. And we had some really like real talk was not just the name, it was like a real talk conversation. So I think beyond social media, we promoted it on social media and that did well. But beyond social media, the more that you can have voices of your community actually out there. So whether that is in a podcast or that's a reel or, a CapCut video or whatever you want to create, the more that you can incorporate the various community members that make up your community, the more powerful it is. And it doesn't have to be as long as a podcast. You know very well, like a 30-second video of a student just talking about something that interests them. Those things do so well. I think the more that we simplify what we're doing on social media, the more powerful that they can be. Sometimes, if you're following too much of what's trending or what's hot, I think sometimes you lose that authenticity that is what builds your community, what makes your community. And
That's
so that would be one
yeah,
example.
that's great advice. Tell me a little bit more about the podcast, about how long was it? How often did you guys do it?
So we dropped episodes every other week.
Okay.
So it was twice a month. And it was from August through June. So we took July off and I think part of August actually. And for me, the mark of something that is successful is if it continues after you and they're still doing it and
Okay.
I'm not there anymore, which makes me the happiest girl ever. And the podcast was really just a way for the district to show this is the real Banning. These are the people that make up this district. This is how incredible we are, and these are the people that make it incredible. So it was from like student leaders to student athletes to we had a local politician on. We had a parent on talking about special ed department, just different topics that were relevant in the community, but not coming from like myself as the PIO or the superintendent as the superintendent. It was a conversation with us, but it was really led by the guest. And so I
Okay.
think that's what made it so powerful, and that's what continues to make it so powerful is that it's not I wouldn't say there's an agenda to that podcast, which I really really appreciated. It was more of again peeling back those layers of that community and what makes that community so special, the things that people don't get to see.
Yeah.
And so that was a very powerful continuous way of telling the story.
So, would you be able to send me an example of one of the podcast episodes
Oh
just so we
yeah.
can put that in the show notes? And then, was there a typical length that you kind of tried to target?
So it depended. Terrence, I know if he's listening, he's gonna laugh, but sometimes he could go on and on and on because he would just get so passionate about the topic or the guest that was on. We really aimed to be around 30-35 minutes if we
Okay.
could. Um, and that seemed to be really successful because that's a commute kind of here.
Hmm.
It's probably short for a commute actually. So it's just enough time that, it keeps your attention. And the episode that I'm going to send you is one of an alumni.
Okay.
I met him at a football game with the superintendent. He was there to support his sister who was in the band. And it was just like we had to have him on. He was a total success story for the district, went on to play college basketball, and just had great, great advice for the community, at large. And it was so cool, like going to, the local McDonald's and hearing people like, oh, you're the girl from the podcast. You had Samuel on. He's amazing. Like, that's just, You
Yeah.
know the story was hitting when that's happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I love it. So we'll give them that link. So that's a great story. How about one or two other stories that were great?
One or two. It's so hard
Or
because there's so many great stories out there. I wouldn't really say any other like specifics besides just tell the story. Like be
yep,
simple about it. I think a lot of times people want to create like this major motion picture of
yep.
like a story, and really, something as simple as going into an art class and showing students, making paper mache for the first time is very interesting. And does really well on social media. I think the more that you simplify the stories, the better. It comes across very genuine, very authentic, um, and it's strategic still, right? There's always
Mhm.
strategy behind it, but it doesn't come across contrived, like you're trying to create this moment. I
Yeah.
think the more that we post things that are just natural with our students and our staff, to me, that's the best kind of storytelling there is.
Yeah, and when you can share that like awe and those learning moments, those aha moments.
Yes.
Lately I've seen some little videos of a little science experiment, and these kids are just like, they're kind of freaking out. It's just like
Yes.
that's incredible, right? That these
It's
things are
such a
happening.
natural reaction. You don't have to create it.
Right.
And we always have our phones in our hands. That's what I tell you. Always have your phone in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just share the story. And so that's really
Yes.
powerful. So,
Yeah.
um as we kind of wrap up, Lynette, what would you say is your best social media tip?
Well, besides keep it simple,
Yeah, that's a good one.
keep it simple. I always tell people you don't need to be in all the places all the time.
Yep.
And so, right now I'm battling to see if I'm going to continue on X or if I'm going to exit X or not. It's just LinkedIn to me is just such a more authentic space to be in. And
Hmm.
so, even me as a communicator, I'm trying to see, do I need to be in all the places all the time?
Right.
Because, your mental health matters, your other things in your life matter. And so, as much as you do want to tell the story and you do want to share that, balance is the key to everything, I think. And so for like a busy teacher, busy administrator, if you love Instagram, thrive on Instagram. You don't need to be on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X. You don't need to be in all the spaces. Be in the
Hmm.
space that you thrive, and then if you decide that, you want to spread your social wings, go ahead and do that. But don't stress yourself out by thinking that you need to be in all the spaces all the time. That is not something that should be an expectation for you. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times people see these people with all these profiles, like me and you, and they think, oh, I have to do that.
Yeah.
But you don't. You
Right.
don't. And you can still be a super effective storyteller that communicates what's going on in your school system.
Yeah. What I love most about you, Lynette, is you're so real. And I think, people appreciate that because sometimes you can have an author come in or a speaker and be like, you got to do this, this, this. And they try to make things like almost even more complicated than it really is. And I
Yeah.
think because your experience has grown up in education, and you've worked with so many different schools, like you really understand what these staff members of all types, from classified, like you said, to teachers to leaders, that you can really say, okay, this is something that you can do. I'm going to give you the tools. It's okay to screw up. And so I just love the work you're doing. I see a lot on social. Of course, we don't get to see each other in person that often. But the work you're doing really matters, obviously, because you're really busy there in
Thank you.
California. But just want to really encourage everybody, check out the book. You've got one or two podcasts out there now.
So I have one podcast. So the
Okay.
Ed Branding podcast has sunsetted. That was a
Okay.
project for the book.
Okay.
So now I have social chats. And so, if you're interested in coming on and talking about what you're doing on social media, what you're doing to storytell, I would love to have you on. Just reach out to me on any of my social media.
Okay, so we're going to make sure to link to your social chats podcast as well. Obviously my listeners would love to do that because they're listening to this
Yeah.
podcast. So they're podcast listeners. And then what is the best way to stay connected to you if they want to reach out for more?
So honestly, the best way to stay connected is any of my social media. We set this up, I think, originally from a DM. So DM me on Instagram, Facebook, not X for now, because I don't know if I'm gonna be there, but
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can reach me on any of those, and I can share the links with you
Yeah,
for
I
you to
think I think
share.
we have
Yeah.
those already. So
Okay.
but yeah, we'll add that banning real talk link to the show notes as well. And I'm sure if anybody's listening and wants to know a little bit more about how that got started, I'm sure you can reach out to Lynette.
For
Thanks so
sure.
much for hanging out with me.
Thank you so much. I
Keep
appreciate you.
Yeah, keep up the great work. And everybody, it's Christmas time. A lot of people looking for gifts. Buy yourself this book for Christmas, okay? Right? They can just get it on Amazon, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Ed Branding book. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with another great episode. So see you later.
Thank you.